She covered her aunt's shift as a cleaner. Never knew the millionaire guest would change her life. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. It all began on a cold morning in early spring. The sun had not yet risen above the skyline of Chicago, and the streets still glistened from last night's rain. Inside a small apartment on the west side, 24-year-old Lena Hart tied her worn sneakers and glanced at the clock on the wall. 5 o'clock. Her aunt's voice echoed weakly from the bedroom. "Sweetheart, I cannot make it today. My back is killing me." "How?" Lena nodded, forcing a smile. "Do not worry, Aunt May. I will cover your shift. Just rest." She grabbed the faded blue uniform from the hanger and slipped it on. It was a size too big, the embroidered tag reading May's cleaning service. Her reflection in the cracked mirror looked older than her years. Dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled into a messy bun, a quiet determination beneath the exhaustion. Outside, the wind bit through her thin jacket as she hurried to the bus stop. She hugged her sketchbook close to her chest, the one thing she never left behind. Between cleaning jobs, she filled its pages with drawings of hotel lobbies, dream apartments, and sunlight through windows she could never afford. By 6 o'clock, she stood in the marble lobby of the Westbridge Hotel, a place so luxurious she usually entered through the service door. The chandeliers shimmered like captured constellations, and every surface gleamed. Her supervisor, Mrs. Klein, was already barking orders. "You are on the 17th floor, suite 1702. The guest checked out last night, so make it quick." Lena nodded, clutching her cleaning cart. The elevator mirrors reflected her nervous face as she whispered under her breath, "Just one morning, then I am back to normal life." The hallway on the 17th floor smelled faintly of cologne and coffee. She knocked gently on the suite door. No response. She swiped the card, pushed it open, and stepped inside. The curtains were half drawn, the air thick with steam from a running shower. She froze. Wait, the guest checked out, right? Her heart pounded. She hesitated, then moved toward the window, picking up a discarded towel. "Maybe housekeeping forgot to reset the system," she whispered. She bent to pick up a cufflink near the bed, a sleek piece of silver with engraved initials AR. The sound of the bathroom door opening made her spin around. A tall man stepped out, his dark hair still dripping from the shower, a towel wrapped around his waist. For a second, both froze in disbelief. His sharp blue eyes widened, and her hands flew to her mouth. "Oh my goodness, I am so sorry," Lena stammered, stumbling backward. "I thought I was told this room was empty." He blinked, then ran a hand through his wet hair. "Clearly it is not." His voice was calm but edged with amusement. "You are not my usual cleaner. I am just covering my aunt's shift," she blurted, cheeks burning. "She was sick, and I should go." She turned to flee, but her sleeve caught the edge of the cleaning cart, knocking over a bottle of disinfectant. It rolled across the floor with a loud clink. The man crouched down, picking it up before she could. "You have quite the dramatic entrance," he said with a half-smile. "I swear I am not usually this clumsy." "I will take your word for it," he replied, setting the bottle back. For a heartbeat, their eyes met hers full of panic, his soft with curiosity. "I am really sorry," she murmured again. "This will not happen again." Before he could respond, she rushed out of the suite, pushing the cart down the hall so fast that one of her gloves slipped from her pocket and fell to the carpet behind her. Inside the room, the man picked up the glove. It was small, worn, and smelled faintly of lavender soap. He turned it over in his hand, then glanced toward the door where she had vanished. A faint smile crossed his face. "Lena Hart," he whispered, reading her name from the cleaning badge she had left on the cart. "You just made my morning a lot more interesting." And though neither of them knew it yet, that accidental meeting the wrong room, the wrong shift was the beginning of everything that would change their lives forever. That night, Lena could not stop replaying the scene in her head. The sound of the shower, the look on his face, her own voice stammering like a fool. By the time she got home, the city sky was pale gray, and her aunt was asleep on the couch with a heating pad pressed to her back. Lena changed out of the oversized uniform, sat at the small kitchen table, and dropped her head into her hands. She had embarrassed herself in front of a hotel guest, possibly someone important, maybe even the owner. What if he reported her? The Westbridge Hotel was strict about professionalism, and she could not afford to lose another job. The small apartment smelled of lavender detergent and instant noodles. A stack of unpaid bills sat in the corner, folded neatly with a rubber band. On the wall above them hung a drawing she had made months ago, a watercolor of sunlight spilling through the hotel's glass lobby. She had painted it on a quiet afternoon when no one was watching. It was her dream to design spaces like that one day, not just clean them. She opened her sketchbook, fingers trembling slightly. Between the pencil smudges and half-finished drawings, she found the one she had started earlier that week. A design for a small community cafe, warm and open, a place where people could rest and talk. One day, she whispered to herself, tracing the lines with her fingertip. Her aunt's voice startled her. "You did great, honey. I heard the hotel called. They said the guest left a note complimenting your kindness." Lena froze. "What? Who?" Her aunt smiled faintly. "Room 1702. Said you handled everything with professionalism, even though there was a mix-up." Lena's cheeks turned pink. She managed a nervous laugh. "I guess he was just being polite." Her aunt leaned back on the couch. "Sometimes good manners come from good hearts. You have both. Do not forget that." The next morning, Lena returned to work. The marble floors gleamed as usual, and the aroma of roasted coffee drifted from the lobby cafe. Mrs. Klein handed her the daily sheet. "You are assigned to the main floor today. No more high-profile suites. I do not want another accident." "Yes, Mom," Lena replied quietly. She kept her head down as she polished the brass railing near the elevators. Through the glass, she saw him, the man from Suite 1702, now fully dressed in a tailored gray suit. He was speaking to the hotel manager, calm and self-assured, the kind of man who carried silence like a second language. For a moment, their eyes met. Lena quickly looked away, pretending to focus on her work. Her pulse skipped. He did not say anything, just gave a small nod before walking toward the cafe. When her shift ended, she wandered into the park across the street. The trees were still bare from winter, but the benches were warm under the noon sunday. She sat with her sketchbook, drawing the hotel skyline from memory. Each line felt like an echo of something she could never reach. "Excuse me," a voice said behind her. She turned, startled. It was him again. The man from the suite, holding a coffee cup in one hand and her missing glove in the other. "You left this," he said simply. Her eyes widened. "Oh, you kept it? I thought it might belong to someone worth returning it to." His tone was calm, sincere. She reached out to take it, her fingers brushing his for a second. "Thank you, Mr. Reed," he answered. "Alexander Reed." The name meant nothing to her, but he studied her reaction as if expecting something. "You are Lena Hart, right? Your name tag was on the cart." She nodded, embarrassed. "Yes. I'm sorry about the other day. I really thought the room was empty." He smiled. "No harm done. I was the one who should have locked the door." Lena laughed softly, relief flooding her. Still, it was mortifying. "I wanted the floor to swallow me whole." "Then I am glad it did not," he said lightly. "You mentioned your aunt was sick. Is she doing better?" The question surprised her. "She is. Thank you for asking." He sipped his coffee, then nodded toward her sketchbook. "Do you always draw hotels, or is today special?" "It is just something I love," she said, hesitating. "I know it sounds silly, but I dream of designing spaces like these someday. Clean lines, warm light, places that make people feel safe." "That does not sound silly at all," he replied. "It sounds like vision." "Oh," Lena blushed, closing the sketchbook quickly. "Well, right now, I just clean them. That is as close as I get." Alexander looked at her with quiet interest. "Dreams have to start somewhere. Sometimes they begin exactly where you stand." She smiled faintly, unsure how to respond. He checked his watch and stood. "It was nice seeing you again, Miss Hart. Take care of your aunt." "You too, Mr. Reed," she said softly. He turned to leave, but paused, glancing back. By the way, the chandelier in the lobby, its reflection in your drawing is perfect. She blinked in surprise, realizing he had seen her sketch after all. Before she could say anything, he was already walking away through the sunlit park, his figure disappearing into the crowd. For the first time in a long while, Lena felt something stir inside her. Not just embarrassment or curiosity, but hope. A few days passed, and Lena tried to convince herself that the brief encounter in the park had been nothing more than a kind gesture from a polite guest. She told herself that men like Alexander Reed belonged to another world, one she had no place in. Still, his words lingered in her mind. Dreams have to start somewhere. Every morning she followed the same routine. Clock in, clean, and disappear. Yet the memory of his calm voice and steady gaze kept breaking through the rhythm of her days like sunlight slipping through blinds. One rainy afternoon, while she was mopping the marble hallway outside the hotel cafe, she heard familiar footsteps. She did not have to look up to know who it was. "Miss Hart," his voice said gently. Lena froze, gripping the mop handle tighter. When she turned, he was standing there in a dark coat, holding 2 paper cups. "I thought you might like some coffee," he said, offering one. She hesitated. "You really do not have to." "I insist. You saved me from starting my morning without caffeine." "I owe you." She accepted the cup, the warmth seeping through her cold fingers. "Thank you, Mr. Reed." He smiled. "Alexander. Just Alexander." The way he said it made her heart stumble. "All right. Alexander." They stood for a moment, surrounded by the low hum of the lobby. A few guests walked by, curious glances flicking toward them. Lena suddenly felt self-conscious in her uniform, the logo of the cleaning service stitched over her chest. He noticed her unease and changed the subject. "Do you usually work on weekends?" "Every day except Sunday," she replied. "My aunt needs the rest, and the overtime helps." He nodded thoughtfully. "That sounds like a heavy schedule." "It is, but I do not mind," she said, sipping her coffee. "Hard work feels better than waiting for luck." A quiet smile touched his lips. "That is something most people forget." Before she could answer, a sharp voice cut through the air. "Lena!" Mrs. Klein, her supervisor, was striding toward them, clipboard in hand. "What are you doing talking to guests? There are rooms to finish." "I am sorry," Lena said quickly, setting the coffee down. Alexander spoke calmly. "She was simply returning my misplaced keycard. I hope that is not a problem." "Mrs." Klein blinked, thrown off by his tone. "Oh, of course not, sir. My apologies." She turned to Lena with a glare that promised a lecture later. When the supervisor walked away, Lena exhaled shakily. "You did not have to cover for me." "I wanted to," he said, his expression sincere. "I do not like seeing people scolded for doing nothing wrong." "Thank you," she murmured, still flustered. He looked at the mop in her hand. "I will let you get back to work." "But, Miss Hart?" She looked up. "Do not stop drawing. Promise me that." Her chest tightened. "I will try." "Do more than try," he said softly. "You have something most people never find the courage to dream while standing on a dirty floor." And with that, he walked away. That evening, after finishing her shift, Lena returned to the staff lounge to store her supplies. On the corner table lay a small envelope with her name written neatly on the front. Inside was a folded note. "For the one who sees beauty where others only see work. Keep creating." Underneath the note was a single fountain pen, sleek and silver, engraved with the same initials she had once seen on a cufflink, AR. She stared at it in disbelief, her heart racing. He had left it for her. Her aunt's words echoed again in her mind. Sometimes good manners come from good hearts. That night, Lena stayed up sketching until the first light of dawn. The rain tapped softly on the window, and the city hummed below. She drew hotel lobbies, art galleries, and open spaces filled with light. But for the first time, she added a figure standing beside her, tall, quiet, with kind eyes that seemed to understand her without a word. She smiled to herself. Maybe dreams did not always start in the right place. Maybe they began with the wrong door, the wrong shift, and a man who noticed a cleaning girl's heart before her uniform. The following week, Lena's routine began to change in quiet, unexpected ways. She still pushed her cleaning cart through the polished halls of the Westbridge Hotel, but now she often found a folded napkin left on the corner of the cafe counter, each one carrying a short message in careful handwriting. Keep chasing the light. The world needs eyes like yours. Do not forget to rest sometimes. At first, she thought it was coincidence, perhaps words from an anonymous guest. But every note was signed with the same initials, A.R. One afternoon, as she was wiping down the lobby windows, Alexander appeared again. He looked more relaxed than before, without the usual rush that surrounded him. "You are hard to find," he said, his tone playful. "I work everywhere and nowhere," Lena answered with a shy smile. "It is part of the job." He nodded toward her cleaning cart. "Do you ever take a break?" "Sometimes," she said. "Mostly when the world slows down." Then let me slow it down for you," he said gently. "Would you join me for coffee after your shift?" Her first instinct was to say no. She had never sat across from someone like him, someone who wore confidence as easily as a pressed suit. But there was warmth in his voice, something that made her believe it was not pity, not curiosity, but genuine interest. "All right," she whispered. "Coffee." That evening, they sat together at a small corner table near the hotel's glass wall. Outside, the city lights flickered like fireflies trapped in a jar. The world beyond the glass felt distant, but inside that moment, everything was clear. Alexander asked about her sketches, about her aunt, about the places she wanted to design one day. Lena found herself talking more than she expected, her words spilling out like a river she had kept dammed for too long. "I draw because it reminds me that the world can be kind," she said softly, "even when it feels small and tired." He watched her with quiet admiration. "You see things most people ignore," he said. "That is rare." She laughed lightly. "Maybe because I spend so much time cleaning other people's reflections." He leaned forward, elbows on the table. "Maybe that is why yours is so clear." The air between them changed. The hum of the hotel faded into silence. She could hear her heartbeat, steady but fast. As he smiled, not the polite smile of a stranger, but something warmer, real. Before they could say more, the front desk called his name. A woman in a dark suit approached, whispering something urgent about an upcoming meeting. Alexander stood, reluctant. "I am sorry. Duty calls." "It is fine," Lena said quickly, standing too. "You must be important." He chuckled softly. "That depends on who you ask." As he walked away, he turned back once, his eyes lingering on her. "Next time, you choose the place," he said. When he was gone, Lena sat back down, her fingers tracing the rim of her cup. She felt lightheaded, caught between disbelief and hope. That night, she returned home and told her aunt everything. "He listens," Lena said, her cheeks still pink. "Not like he is waiting for his turn to speak, but like he actually hears me." Her aunt smiled knowingly. "A man who listens is a rare thing, sweetheart. Hold on to that, but keep your feet on the ground." Lena nodded, gazing out the window. Below, the city lights shimmered, each one a promise waiting to be kept. Somewhere inside the West Bridge, Alexander Reed stood by his suite window, looking down at the same streets, the same lights. He did not yet understand why he felt drawn to the girl in the blue uniform, only that her honesty felt like air after years of silence. For both of them, something gentle had begun to grow quiet, fragile, and real. A few weeks later, the Westbridge Hotel buzzed with preparations for a charity gala. Staff hurried through the hallways, hanging banners and arranging flowers, while guests from all over the city filled the suites. Lena's supervisor reminded everyone that the event was the biggest of the year. "Every important figure in Chicago will be here," Mrs. Klein said. "Do not make mistakes." Lena tried to stay focused on her work. She was assigned to the evening shift, helping with light cleanup between events. Her aunt had warned her that nights like this could bring both opportunities and trouble. By 7 o'clock, the ballroom glowed with chandeliers and laughter. Lena stood near the side door, ready to collect empty glasses and fold napkins. From her position, she could see the crowd: men in tuxedos, women in gowns, and reporters with flashing cameras. It felt like another world. Her eyes searched unconsciously for one face, the man who had left her notes and silver pens, the one who listened without judgment. But he had not been at the hotel all week. Part of her wondered if he had already moved on, back to the world where people like her did not belong. The host's voice echoed through the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our guest of honor, the man whose vision and generosity built the Westbridge Foundation Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Alexander Reed." Lena froze. For a second, she thought she had misheard. But as the spotlight turned, she saw him. Alexander walked onto the stage, perfectly composed, his gray suit catching the light like steel. Applause filled the room. Her breath caught in her throat. Chief Executive Officer? Her mind scrambled to understand. The same man who brought her coffee, who sat across from her in the cafe, was the owner of the very hotel where she scrubbed floors. He spoke with grace and confidence, thanking donors and staff, mentioning the new scholarship program for creative students. The crowd cheered, but Lena barely heard him. Her chest tightened as realization sank in. He had known who she was all along. When the speech ended, she slipped out of the ballroom, her pulse racing. The corridor felt colder, emptier. She leaned against the wall, trying to steady her breathing. "Lena," his voice called softly from behind. She turned. He stood in the doorway, his expression caught between surprise and worry. "You were not supposed to find out like this," he said. "You are the chief executive officer," she said quietly. "The owner." "Yes. All this time, you never told me. I wanted you to know me without the noise," he said. "People see a title and stop seeing the person." Her voice shook. "And what did you see when you looked at me? A charity case? A story to make you feel human again?" His eyes softened. "I saw someone who reminded me what honesty looks like." She stepped back. "You should have been honest too." Before he could answer, the hotel manager appeared at the end of the hall. "Mr. Reed, the press is waiting." Alexander hesitated, but Lena was already turning away. "Go," she said. "They need you more than I do." "Oh." He watched her walk down the service corridor, her figure disappearing into the dim light. Inside the ballroom, applause rose again as his name was called, but he barely heard it. All he could think of was the look in her eyes: hurt, betrayal, and something deeper, something that might never return. That night, Lena sat by her apartment window, the city stretching endlessly below. Her sketchbook lay open, but she could not draw. The silver pen rested beside her hand, its shine dull in the moonlight. For the first time since she met him, her heart felt empty. In another part of the city, Alexander stood alone in his penthouse office, the lights of Chicago flickering against the glass. He had everything he had ever built, and yet somehow, it felt like nothing at all. Days turned into weeks, and the rhythm of Lena's life returned to its old, quiet pace, but the color had gone out of it. She stopped sketching, stopped humming while she worked, and stopped looking toward the hotel doors, as if expecting someone to walk in. The blue uniform that once felt like armor now felt like a weight. She avoided the 17th floor completely. Every time she passed the silver plaque that read executive offices, her stomach tightened. The news articles about Alexander Reed were everywhere, photographs of him shaking hands, standing beside mayors, speaking about charity. To the world, he was a symbol of success and generosity. To her, he was a reminder of how easily truth could feel like a lie. At night, she sat by the apartment window, listening to the city hum. Her aunt noticed the silence that hung over her. "Sweetheart," Aunt May said gently, "you have not touched your sketchbook in a month." Lena gave a faint smile. "Maybe I ran out of things to draw," her aunt sighed. "Or maybe you are afraid of what comes next." The words lingered. That evening, Lena opened the sketchbook again. On the last page she had drawn, there was a figure standing beside her, tall, calm, looking at the world with quiet hope. She traced the outline once, then closed the book. "I guess dreams are easier when no one is watching," she whispered. At the Westbridge Hotel, Alexander was not doing much better. His staff noticed the change. He arrived early, left late, and rarely smiled. The board meetings were efficient but cold. He found himself staring at the marble floors, remembering the sound of Lena's laughter echoing faintly across them. One night, his assistant entered the office. "Sir, the architectural scholarship submissions are ready for review." "Set them there," he said absently. When the door closed, he flipped through the folders. Designs, numbers, blueprints, until one caught his eye. A hand-drawn concept titled, "The Hands That Build Dreams." The signature at the bottom read, "Lena Hart." He stared at the page for a long time. It was a sketch of a community art space, simple, warm, with sunlight flowing through high windows. At the center stood a cleaning cart transformed into a mobile art station. The caption read, "Even the simplest tools can create beauty." Something inside him shifted. He realized she had not stopped dreaming. She had simply moved forward without him. The next day, he asked his foundation board to fund the project anonymously. "No public credit," he said firmly. "This one is not about me." Meanwhile, Lena received a letter from the Westbridge Foundation. It invited her to assist in designing a small public gallery for community artists. The envelope had no signature, only a golden seal with the letter R. She stared at it in disbelief, then laughed softly to herself. "Maybe some mistakes are not finished teaching me yet," she said. But even as she accepted the offer, a quiet ache remained. She did not know if she could forgive him, not yet. One evening, while working late at the new gallery site, she watched the construction lights flicker against the half-built walls. She could almost hear his voice. "Dreams have to start somewhere." She closed her eyes, the cool night wind brushing her face. "Then maybe this is where mine starts again," she whispered. Somewhere across the city, Alexander stood on his balcony, staring at the same horizon. He did not know if she would ever let him back into her life. But for the first time in weeks, hope did not feel like a memory. It felt like a promise waiting to be earned. The opening day of the community gallery arrived with a quiet sunrise. The building was simple but full of light, its wide windows gleaming like mirrors of the morning sky. Lena stood in the center of the new space, her heart thudding as workers finished hanging the final pieces of art. The scent of fresh paint mixed with the sweetness of new beginnings. She still did not know who had funded the project. The envelope had never revealed a name, but she had stopped asking. Maybe it did not matter, she told herself. What mattered was that this place existed, a gallery built for people like her, for dreamers who were used to being unseen. A group of local artists began to arrive, their laughter and chatter filling the once-empty hall. Lena greeted them with nervous excitement, explaining where to place each exhibit. It was the first time she had felt proud of her own voice in years. Then, just before noon, she heard footsteps that did not belong to the workers or the guests. A quiet, steady rhythm that made her heart recognize before her eyes did. Alexander Reed walked through the door. He wore no suit, no entourage, only a simple gray sweater, and that same calm expression she remembered from the park. For a moment, the noise of the gallery faded, leaving only the sound of her pulse. "Lena," he said softly. She froze, gripping the edge of a display table. Why are you here?" "I came to see what you built," he said. "It is beautiful." Her voice tightened. "You funded it, did you not?" He hesitated. "Yes. But I did not want you to feel like you owed me anything. I wanted to do something that mattered to you." "That was not your choice to make," she said quietly. "I know," he admitted. "But I wanted to make things right, not as a chief executive officer, not as someone trying to fix the past, just as a man who still believes in what you see when you draw." Her eyes stung, but she stood her ground. "You lied, Alexander. You made me trust something that was not real." He took a careful step closer. "It was real for me. Every moment. I just did not know how to tell you without losing it." She shook her head. "You already lost it." "Oh." For a long moment, neither spoke. Then a voice from across the room called, "Miss Hart, we are ready for the ribbon cutting." Lena took a deep breath. "You should go," she said, her tone soft but final. "This gallery belongs to everyone, not just to your foundation." He nodded slowly. "Then promise me one thing." "What?" "Do not let the hurt stop you from creating. The world needs what you build." Her throat tightened, but she nodded once. "Goodbye, Alexander." "Arcrees." He lingered for a heartbeat, as if memorizing her face one last time, then turned and left. The door closed quietly behind him. Outside, Alexander stood on the sidewalk, watching through the glass as the ribbon was cut. The crowd applauded, and inside the gallery, Lena smiled for the photographers. But when their eyes met through the reflection in the glass, both felt the same ache, one born of love that had not died, only learned to wait. That night, when the gallery emptied, Lena sat alone under the soft glow of the new lights. She looked around at the walls filled with color, her sketchbook open on her lap. For the first time, she wrote a new title across the page: "Forgiveness Takes Work." The city lights outside shimmered faintly, and somewhere in that vast, noisy world, Alexander Reed drove away in silence, carrying the weight of every word he had not said. Winter melted into spring. and the small community gallery that Lena had helped build began to bloom with life. Every weekend, new artists arrived carrying their canvases and stories, and the space filled with the soft sound of music, laughter, and hope. The gallery had become a home for those who had never been invited into one. For Lena, it was more than a job. It was a promise kept to herself, to her aunt, and maybe even to the man who had once believed in her. She still thought about Alexander sometimes, though she tried not to. Every now and then, she caught glimpses of him in the newspapers, smiling beside government officials, or standing at the openings of luxury hotels. But in her heart, she held on to the version of him who had carried a cup of coffee and listened like the world had stopped. One morning, she arrived early to prepare for a new exhibition. The gallery smelled of fresh flowers and varnished wood. As she walked to the main hall, something stopped her in her tracks. There, on the central display wall, hung a large framed canvas she had never seen before. It was a reproduction of her very first sketch, the one she had made on her aunt's kitchen table, the one Alexander had once complimented. The drawing of the chandelier and the reflection of the West Bridge lobby glowed softly beneath the morning light. Beneath it was a small plaque that read, "The Art of Lena Hart, a tribute to kindness that built dreams." Her breath caught. She looked around, confused. No one else was there yet. Behind her, a voice said quietly, "I thought this place could use a bit of its creator." She turned. Alexander stood near the doorway, holding a small bouquet of white lilies. He looked different, less polished, more human. "I got permission from the foundation to host this," he said. "A permanent exhibition, dedicated to the person who taught me what honesty looks like." Lena's eyes shimmered. "Why are you doing this?" "Because it is time I stopped hiding," he said. "I have spent my life building towers, but none of them ever felt like home until I met you. I am not asking for forgiveness, Lena. I am asking for a chance to make things right truthfully this time." She hesitated, emotions colliding, pain, gratitude, longing. "You do not need to prove anything to me." "Faye, I know," he said softly, "but I need to prove it to myself." He placed the bouquet on the table beside her sketchbook and stepped back. "If you tell me to leave, I will. But before that, I want you to know this gallery will keep running, fully funded, under your name. It belongs to you now." Lena felt tears slip down her cheeks. "You cannot keep giving me everything, Alexander." He shook his head. "I am not giving you anything. You built this. I just finally learned to see it." "Oh." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The light through the window painted soft gold on the floor. Finally, she took a breath and whispered, "Then stay. Not as the chief executive officer, not as the man who lied. Stay as the man who remembers why we dream." Alexander's expression broke into something between relief and awe. "Then this is my second chance?" She smiled faintly. "Only if you are willing to start from the beginning." He nodded. "From the very beginning." The gallery doors opened as the morning crowd began to arrive, but for a brief second, the world around them disappeared. Two people stood in a room filled with light, both finally honest, both finally home. A year later, the community gallery had become a beloved part of the city. What had once been an abandoned building now glowed every night with warm light and laughter. The name above the entrance read, "Hope Interiors, founded by Lena Hart," and below it, in smaller letters, "In partnership with the Westbridge Foundation." Inside, the air smelled of fresh paint and spring flowers. A new exhibition was opening that evening, celebrating local artists who had rebuilt their lives through creativity. Guests filled the hall, and photographers snapped pictures beneath the chandelier that now hung in the center, a gift from Alexander, made to resemble the one that had started their story. Lena stood near the stage, wearing a simple ivory dress. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the microphone. "This place began with a mistake," she said, her voice steady but soft. "A wrong room, a wrong shift, and a meeting I was never supposed to have. But sometimes the wrong door can lead us exactly where we are meant to be." The audience applauded, and from the front row, Alexander smiled. He looked at her the way he had the very first day, quietly, as if she were the only person in the room. After the speeches, soft music filled the air. Guests mingled and toasted, while Lena slipped away to the corner of the gallery. The walls were covered with her sketches, her first one of the Westbridge lobby, Her drawings of the cafe, the park, and now this very gallery. Alexander approached, holding a small velvet box. "Lena," he said gently, "there is one more piece missing from this collection." She turned toward him, surprise flickering in her eyes. He opened the box, revealing a silver ring shaped like two intertwined lines, a design taken from one of her earliest drawings. "This is not about fixing the past," he said quietly. "It is about building a future, with you." The crowd nearby grew silent as he knelt on one knee. "Lena Hart, will you marry me?" Her eyes filled with tears, but this time, they were not from confusion or fear, they were from certainty. She nodded slowly. "Yes, Alexander, from the beginning." Applause rose around them, warm and thunderous, echoing off the walls that had once known only silence. Later that night, after everyone had gone, they stood alone beneath the chandelier's glow. Lena rested her head on his shoulder and whispered, "Do you remember what you said that day in the park?" He smiled. "Dreams have to start somewhere. And this," she said softly, "was the best mistake we ever made." Outside, the city lights shimmered like 1,000 promises, and for the first time in their lives, both of them felt completely at home. Two hearts that had crossed paths by accident, now bound together by choice, by truth, and by love that had finally found its way home.